and I forgot. So now we're recording. Okay, so the basics, attend class and be on time. Like I said, you're going to mess up and you're going to be online on a day that you're supposed to be in class or vice versa. That is okay. The only thing with my section specifically for the 9 a.m. is we're at capacity. So if I see you in the wrong section, I have to tell you, just because if we get too many people, we're at the limit. So if somebody comes in and counts, then we'll probably get in trouble, and that's just a whole can of worms. But do not be ashamed if I have to tell you, or if Dr. Annette says something. It's bound to happen. I almost done it for one of my classes, so it's going to happen. Don't be ashamed. So the next thing is take notes, recommended on a PowerPoint. So two things with this one. One, it is best to take notes by hand. So many studies have shown that if you are actually writing the notes, that you understand them better than if you're typing them. So take them by hand no matter what. Second thing, this is more specifically towards Dr. Arnett, because as you guys have noticed, she likes to talk a lot. So her PowerPoints are like an outline. So if you have this outline in front of you, then you can just write what she's saying. Because sometimes she does tend to go a little fast. So if you already have the information on the PowerPoint in front of you, it's just so much easier. There is a way to get like 6 slides per page. So if you have a printer, it's very easy. Just go to the print setup and click like 6 slides per page. Very easy. If you use Papercut, you are going to open the slideshow as a slideshow, not as a PDF. I recommend 2 slides. Totally do that. I usually do 4, but that's because I write kind of small. If you write big, you can do 2, you can do 6, you can do however many as trial and error. If you do 4 or 6, though, I recommend not doing front and back, so you have the back to like write on if you need to. If you do 2, you could do front and back, or you could do single side. But if you use Papercut, which I do use, so what? If you go into PowerPoint and go to print, click 6, 4, 2, however many slides you want per page, and then click print to a PDF. It will save on your computer as a PDF, and then it'll have however many slides per page, and then you can just upload that to paper. If you're confused, because I know that sounds super confusing, if it's not like in front of you, just shoot me an email and I will send you screenshots and the whole 9. If you have a question, ask. This is super, super important, because so after test 1, sometimes I'll go through the exam with students and they'll be like, yeah, I never really understood hydrolysis. And I'm like, okay, well, did you reach out for help? And they'll say, no, not really. I just never really understood it. If you don't understand something, please, please, please come to me. You can come to Fallon, Dr. Arnett. You can schedule a tutoring appointment. We are here to help you. So please, 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 if you have a question, ask. If you don't understand something, come to a study session, schedule a tutoring appointment. Both Fallon and I are both tutors, and I think there's around 2 to 3 other tutors. So if for some reason you don't want a TA and you want someone to just bounce ideas off of, there are tutors besides Fallon and I. And lastly, I'm always available through email. I usually go to sleep around 10 or 11, so if you email me at like midnight, probably not going to answer until I get up the next morning. But you can email me, because that's totally fine. Just don't expect an answer until the next morning. Okay. So this is where it starts to get really important, because this is where college really differs from high school. because I don't know about you guys, but in high school, I was that girl who, like, wouldn't study until the period before the test, and I would walk out with, like, 115. Does anybody else relate to that? Because I didn't have to study, or if I studied, it was very minimal. It was like an hour at night. In college, that's not going to fly. So how do you study? Well, there's a process called metacognition, which is basically just thinking about thinking, which just basically means as you're learning the information, you need to think about it and understand it. You must be active in your studies and not passive. So passive includes reading the textbooks, reading the notes, passively listening to lectures. Some of these things you can turn active, but if I'm just reading the textbook and falling asleep and bored out of my mind and thinking about what I'm going to have for dinner, you're not learning it. I read a study recently that said that you only retain about 10% of the information you read. So that's why we want to make it active. So this is 10 ways to practice metacognition. This is, these 10 steps are copy and pasted from a book. It's called Teach Yourself How to Learn by Sandra McGuire. 10 out of 10 recommend this book. I had to read it as part of a summer program that I was a mentor in, and honestly, it helped change my study habits, and it taught me that, like, I had made it through 2 years of college studying the wrong way or not the right way. So number 1 is previewing material. So this doesn't mean teach yourself the material. This means reading the PowerPoint slides before you go to class. So if you read the PowerPoint slides and there's a word that you've never heard of and that you have no idea what it means and it just confuses you to death, circle it. And then when she's lecturing, if it still confuses you, if you don't want to ask in class, that's okay. If you want to email me during class, I have my computer up, obviously, because I'm viewing the chat. If you want to shoot me an email, especially if you're online, that's totally fine. If you're in seat, probably would prefer for you to wait, but that's completely up to you. So preview the material just that way so you're not completely blindsided. Number 2 is preparing for active reading. This means that you go through your textbook, which is free, so everybody has it, and read the headlines, read like the bolded words, maybe read the vocab words so you have an idea of what you're going to be reading, and then write out questions that you have for each section. So if there's a word that you have no idea what it means, write, what does glycolysis mean? And then as you're reading, try to answer those questions. So number 3 is paraphrasing. This is super helpful. So this can be done in 2 ways. It can be done for the book or for the lecture material. And what this basically means is read the book or read over your notes or rewatch a lecture video, and then turn everything off, put everything away, and try to write in like a paragraph what that lecture was teaching. And if you can write out the main ideas, then you pretty well know it. Reading actively, we already talked about. I would write notes as you're reading. I outline as I'm reading. Sometimes if you are a, I forget the word, auditory. There we go. I know English sometimes. So if you are an auditory learner, sometimes just moving your lips like you're reading out loud helps tremendously. That has been a life-saving thing for me because I used to not be able to remember anything that I read. And if I'm just like mouthing the words, I remember it 10 times better. Number 5, using a textbook even if it's not required. Well, your textbook is required and it's free, so you literally have no excuse not to use it. Go through. If you want to go through before the lecture, that can be a sense of previewing, or if you want to go through after the lecture to kind of answer your questions, that's just a person by person and honestly a class by class thing. For me personally, for my psychology class, I always read before, but for my physics class, I always read it after. So it just depends. I would say just trial and error to figure out what works best for you. Going to class and taking notes by hand, we already talked about this. I cannot stress it enough to take notes by hand. If you can do it on a PowerPoint, fantastic. If you can't, a notebook will be fine. I would rather you write on a notebook than write on a computer. Okay. Doing homework without using solved examples as a guide. This is something I struggled with because I would type in the question and I would go to Google or Chegg, and it would show step by step how to do it with like different numbers or different words, but it would show you step by step like where to put which numbers where. And especially for a math class or a chemistry class, I would do this. But if you start to do your homework like a quiz, then it really tests you on what you know and what you don't, instead of just, oh, well, I can plug this number in here so I know it. 9 times out of 10, you really don't. So number 8 is teaching material to a real or imagined group of audiences. That's how I study personally. My mom, she always jokes that she never went to college, but she has a degree in biology, because before every test I will call her, and sometimes I think she just mutes me and goes about her business, but I will teach her whatever I'm learning or whatever I don't understand or whatever I am going to be tested on. And if she can explain it back to me, then I know it well enough to teach it to her. Number 9 is working in groups or in pairs. Again, cannot stress this enough. Of course, safely because of COVID, social distancing, all of that. If you want to do it on Zoom, that's great, or Microsoft Teams or something like that. Just, I found that if you study in groups, maybe one person understands a concept that you were really struggling with, and maybe they have a mnemonic or like a funny story to remember it, or a different way of explaining it, and then vice versa. I just found that working at least in pairs is very, very helpful. So last but not least is creating a practice exam. So that is around exam time, go through your notes, make questions. What me and my roommate would do is she would make a test and I would make a test, and then we would swap. And like I would do her test and she would do my test, and that's how we really got to understand the material and to see what we didn't know, because that's what studying is all about. It's not about saying, oh, well, I got this. It's about saying, okay, well, I understand this part, but I really don't understand this part, so that's what I'm going to focus on. Don't expect to be perfect when you're studying. Okay. So tips to study based on your learning style. I know most of you guys are freshmen, but in your university class, they will make you take a learning style quiz. Pay attention to that. That really shows you how you learn best, or what grabs your attention more. So if you are a visual learner, draw or study pictures, make diagrams and charts. If you're an auditory learner, go back and listen to the lecture videos, or if you are reading something, mouth the words, or just read it aloud if you're alone. If you're verbal, explain what you learned to a friend. That's like teaching a lesson, or read your notes out loud. Reading and writing, rewrite your notes after every class and multiple times before a test. This is the biggest thing. Some people will say, oh, well, my learning style is reading and writing. And I'll say, okay, how many times did you rewrite your notes? And they'll say once. That is not enough. If you truly learn better by reading and writing, you have to rewrite your notes, I would say at least 4 to 5 times, if that is truly your only solid way of studying. Last is kinesthetic, and for that, I would try to teach a topic to a friend by drawing a diagram, writing key topics, and verbally explaining with hand motion. So that's kind of using like all of the above. Okay. When to start studying for a test? So I would recommend the 5-day study plan, which is you start 5 days before the test. So the idea of the 5-day study plan, which I'm sure you guys will learn about in your university class, is that you start with chapter 1 on day 1 and you study for an hour. And then on day 2, you study chapter 1 for 15 minutes and chapter 2 for an hour, and then so on and so forth. I don't recommend doing it in chronological order. I recommend doing it in the order of the topics that you don't understand. So, for example, if you totally understand the first chapter, so the biological themes and the parts of an experiment, you got that. Save that for a last day. But you don't have the idea of hydrolysis or dehydration synthesis. Start with dehydration synthesis and hydrolysis as one, and then do 2. Like, I would make a list and order the topics in the order that you, in decreasing order of your comprehension. There we go. Okay, how much should I study? This is definitely a most asked questions. So start at least 5 days before a test. Study in periods of intense study sessions. This is also from the book I mentioned earlier, Teach Yourself How to Learn. So it recommends that instead of studying with, yes, 100% study the chapter for vocab. Okay, so the book Teach Yourself How to Learn recommends that you study in periods of intense study sessions, which can last from 15 minutes to an hour. If you have a longer attention span and you want to do an hour, great. After 30 minutes, I'm bored and I'm thinking about lunch. So, like, I can't do past 30 minutes. But in those 30 minutes, you have to be distraction-free. So that means no music, no TV, no friends trying to talk to you unless you're studying in a group, distraction-free. And an app that I found extremely, extremely helpful for this is called the Pocket Points app. And you can download it on the Apple App Store. I'm sure they have it for Samsung. I don't have a Samsung, so I'm not for sure, but I'm sure they do. And what this app does is it allows you to, I guess, click onto it when you are on campus and you close your phone, and it counts down how long you're off your phone without picking it up. And for every 10 minutes you're off your phone, you get a point. And with those points, you can trade it in for like 10% off of an Amazon purchase, or 10% off. I think they had an Old Navy one on there, or like really awesome gift cards. But the thing that sold me is they have a leaderboard, and I am the most competitive person you will ever meet. So if there's a leaderboard, I'm going to do my best just so I can be like in the top 5, which I have yet to make it in the top 5, but I'm trying. So especially if a lot of people from UC download it and are in the same league, then you guys can like compete with each other, and also you get free stuff out of it. And it helps you because if you know that you're earning points on this app with your phone closed and in a drawer, then you're less likely to pick it up. So after each session, take a break that's around half the amount of time that you studied. So if you study for 30 minutes, take a break for 15. I was really bad on studying for 30 minutes and then taking an hour break. You're not going to get anything done that way. Take a break around half the amount of time that you studied. Okay, so actually test day. So on test day, you need to be confident. You need to go in thinking this is something you can conquer, that you believe in yourself. Because at this point, right before test day, there's nothing, well, the morning of the test, there's really nothing that you can do to, like, studying wise, if it's like 15 minutes before the test. So the best thing that you can do 15 minutes before the test is to give yourself a pep talk. I studied. I am great. I am smart. I can do this. And then if you get your attitude up, that's the attitude that you will carry through the test. Another thing is to identify your triggers. One of my triggers is I would drink a lot of caffeine before a test. Now, I'm not saying don't drink your morning coffee, because you guys do not want to see me if I haven't had my morning coffee. That means if you usually have 1 cup, don't have 4 cups, because then that's just going to make you really nervous and jittery, and it's just going to be bad. So drink your normal amount, no more, no less. Okay, starting the test. Answer the questions you know first. If you don't know question 1, that is okay. Skip it and go on. This says if it takes you longer than 1 to 2 minutes, I would say 30 seconds to a minute. If you don't know it, skip it. It's okay. If you know the answer right off, answer it directly. This is so important because so many people said, oh, well, I thought it was B, but then I thought it was too easy and D sounded smarter. I will tell you that I know professors in this school who will make up words to put as answer choices just because they sound smart. So please, if you know it, don't let the other answers cloud your judgment, second guess yourself. Go with your gut always. Always, always, always. Okay. So answering the questions. Most of the questions are critical thinking questions, which means that they are not a very straightforward, what color is the sky? They're very wordy. So read the question and underline the key concepts. I understand that since you guys are going to be taking your exam online, it's not going to be that easy to underline, but I'm sure that you can like highlight with your cursor, or if you got paper and like write it down. Go through the answers and cross out the ones that are nonsense or that we did not discuss in class. Again, that's going to be kind of hard to do with it being online, but use scrap paper and just write down A, B, C, D. I know my alphabet, I promise. And if you know that it's not A, if A says like purple seaweed, which she will have some that's like off the wall, like you know it's not right, mark it out. If it sounds like a smart word that we did not talk about in class, it is not right. Let me say that again. If we did not talk about it in class, she's not going to test you on it. Sometimes she will purposely put key words from upcoming chapters as a multiple choice answer simply to see because it sounds smart. So make sure if we did not talk about it, it's not an answer. Promise. Okay. So are there any questions that you guys have about this material? Because now we're going to get into the fun stuff. So any questions? Is there anybody that's like completely really nervous about the class, or if they have anything to add? Unmute or put it in the chat. Okay, I'm going to take that as a no. So you guys are going to have to unmute here in a minute, but not right now. So these questions that are on your screen, you may or may not see somewhere. May or may not have copied and pasted. So this is more of a straightforward question, and we have talked about this, so I will expect you guys to answer this. You can just put the letter in the chat if you want to. It says, what is the difference between a theory and a hypothesis? So when you're going through, if you have a question like this on a test, hint, hint, and you go through and you see this, what's the difference between a theory and a hypothesis? That's a very straightforward question. There's nothing that you can really mark out. There's no really nonsense to them with answers. There is no difference. Well, we know that there's a difference. That's pretty self-explanatory. So we can mark out A. That's not it. A theory is a hypothesis that has been proven. Excuse me. A theory is a hypothesis that has been proven. Maybe. We're going to leave it for now. A hypothesis is testable with an experiment. A theory is not. Well, a theory is testable to some extent, right? Or it wouldn't be a theory. So a theory is a broad scope hypothesis backed up with scores of evidence. Very, very possible. Or E, a hypothesis is a broad scope theory backed up with scores of evidence. We know that's not right because a theory is much larger than a hypothesis. So between B and D, we haven't narrowed down to those two. What do you guys think it would be? Okay. Okay. Everybody's saying D, which is correct. Who wants to tell me why they picked D and not B? Nobody?
Can I ask a question again?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Can you guys see the question now?
Yes, I think like a theory has been supported, and like a theory consists of the hypotheses that support the theory. But I don't know if it's been like absolutely proven, so that's why I chose B, because a theory is a broad scope of the hypotheses that back up the theory. They support it, but they don't like necessarily full on prove it. So that's why I chose D.
110% correct. And a lot of stuff like this comes down to little words. A theory is broad. If you look on her PowerPoint, she uses the word broad to describe a theory. A theory has been tested over and over, but it cannot theoretically be proven for some reasons or another, but it is assumed to be true. So that is completely right. Thank you so much for answering. So now this question we have not went over. I'm so sorry. She wouldn't let me take all these questions from exam 1 because that's like cheating. So I'm not going to expect you guys to answer it, but this is an example of a question that has a really large question with pretty straightforward answers. So who wants to tell me how they tackle this question? You don't have to know the answer. We haven't covered it, but how would you tackle the question itself? I hear a chat. Hold on. Yes, Emily, that's completely correct. Okay. Who wants to volunteer? Please volunteer. I promise I won't bite. How would you tackle this question?
I'll just start by like circling or underlining the main parts, like the 0.15 in sodium chloride, maybe. So I'll just start underlining the most important things of the question.
Perfect. Okay, so what about this a mammal blood cell? That kind of confused me, but is that relevant to the question at all? Or is it just mumbo jumbo that she put in?
It's not relevant.
It's not relevant, exactly. So sometimes she will put more information concentration than you need. To answer this question, the only thing that you need is the 0.15 and the 0.45. That is it. Okay? So that's just an example. This mammalian blood cell, blah, blah, blah. The only thing that you need is the concentration, and then this is the cell concentration, and this is the seawater concentration, which, like I said, you guys have not went over this. I'm not expecting you to know it. That's just an example of how to tackle a bigger question. So, last but not least.
Is the answer B, though?
I'm not sure. Let me look. Okay. Hold on 2 seconds. I haven't had this written out. No, so the answer is not B. The actual answer would be A. So that would have to do with osmosis and a lot of other big words that we will learn about next chapter. But for this question, the answer is A. Okay. Now let's go to the very last question. This is, again, something that I don't expect you guys to know, but this is a much larger question. So we have looked at 3 types of test questions: a very straightforward question with bigger answers, a medium-sized question with straightforward answers, and now we have an extra large with a lot of big words, kind of confusing question with very straightforward answers. So who wants to tell me how they would tackle this? If you read this, there are really only 2 words that you need to know out of this whole big mumbo-jumbo about Tay-Sachs. And I don't know about y'all, but the only thing I know about Tay-Sachs, Grey's Anatomy taught me. But you can still answer this question even without knowing that.
Are the 2 important words undigested lipids and cellular organelle?
Exactly. Why did you pick that?
Because those are the main, I guess, things within it. Like, those are the scientific words.
Exactly. So it's saying that in Tay-Sachs, the main problem is undigested lipids. So that is the whole main issue with Tay-Sachs disease. And we know that there is a cellular organelle, sorry guys, that is misfiring or is not effective. So what I would turn that question into and ask myself is, whose job is it to digest lipids?
The lysosome?
Great job. 100%. So the answer to this one is C. Now, does everybody see how we done that? Okay, so that is all that I have. I'm going to send out this PowerPoint. Let me stop sharing. Okay, so I am going to send out the PowerPoint. The only thing is, guys, I have to take the test questions off before I send it out. So if somebody wrote them down, good for you. In order for me to send them out, because I have no control about if you send it to your buddy or whoever, I have to take the test questions off. So sorry, not my rule. What was the last answer? The last answer was lysosome. I believe it was C. Yeah, it was C, lysosome. So, if nobody has any questions for me, you can't go just yet because I have to take a picture of your little names on this attendance sheet so I know to count your attendance and get your bonus points. So give me 2 seconds. Okay, so I have everybody's name. So if you guys want to stay behind and chat, I'm here. If you have questions that you didn't want to ask in front of everybody, I'm also here. If not, you guys are free to go, and I will see you guys in class on Wednesday. I forgot what day it was for a minute. I will see group 2 in class on Wednesday, and group 1 online. All right, so thank you guys. Have a good evening.
Would you be willing to tell me about the second question?
Sure.
Like
Okay.
how you do it?
Yeah. So do you already have it written down, or do you want me to share my screen?
No, I don't have it up or written. I'm sorry.
No, you're cool. Let me share my screen again. You tell me if you can see it. Okay. Can you see the question now?
No.
No?
No.
Phooey.
There it is. It's up now.
Okay. How about now?
Now it's gone again.
Now it's gone again. Great. Let me stop this recording really quick because maybe...
Okay.